Okay, so this time around, we're doing my top 5 favorite fully released games of this year. Just like last time, I'm showing my hours played. Not all these games came out this year, they're just the games I enjoyed the most this year. And I don't know why I didn't do a top 10 list, because putting together 5 games that I enjoyed most this year is impossible considering how many games I enjoyed this year. I'm an idiot. Number 5 for me is Gunfire Reborn, a game I played a lot in 2021 but played even more of in 2022. With a total of 147 hours of playtime, Gunfire got me into FPS roguelites and made me even more excited about the potential of FPS roguelites. There's a lot to love about this game, lots of progression with a full skill tree, arsenal of weapons and skills to unlock, achievements to get and difficulties to beat. Weapon variety is great and all of them feel super unique. In terms of movement and shooting mechanics, I think shooting feels good, killing enemies is satisfying, and like I said, the guns all feel unique. The movement mechanics can feel a bit weird sometimes, and the clipping with the environment can feel kind of off. Best way I can describe it is floaty, but it doesn't take anything major away from the gameplay. The power spike you'll get the more you progress through the run can become crazy, and at some point you will feel broken, and that's just part of the fun. Unless you're playing with friends, there's always someone that seems to get the short end of the stick and just does nothing the whole run, or maybe it's a skill issue, I'm not quite sure. I do have some issues with balancing on the hardest difficulties, and if you find yourself struggling, you can grab up to 3 other mates and run through the game. Do Ye Games, sorry if I butchered that, are consistently updating and patching the game, which is always a good sign. Gunfire is certainly a mainstay in the FPS roguelite genre, and while the game isn't perfect, it's deep enough to keep you entertained and challenged for many hours. Number 4 for me is Risk of Rain 2. With almost 180 hours on record, this is the definition of replayability. There's two things I love most about Risk of Rain 2. Number one is the combat style. This style of combat is so satisfying and mechanically rewarding too. Zipping around on Huntress or using the grappling hook on Loader, it's all so smooth and killing enemies feels so good, especially when your power starts to spike and they just stand no chance. I also feel like the combat is super dynamic depending on the items you have and the skills you have equipped. And the second thing is replayability. There are multiple challenges to overcome in Risk of Rain 2, and even if you shy away from them at the start, every run there's something to unlock, a new skill for a character, a new item, new biome, new challenge. The game certainly runs deep. Good thing about Risk of Rain 2 is even after I 100%ed it, it's still fun to go back because the gameplay is so solid. Only other game I've felt this way about is Hades. The somewhat recent Survivors of the Void DLC influenced the game in so many awesome ways as well, meaning you have even more variety in your runs. There's a lot to praise about Risk of Rain 2. It's impossible to fit in such a short summary like this. Last thing I'll say is that I highly recommend people stay away from using the artifact of command, which lets you choose items. If you turn it on, it will just make your experience much more bland and repetitive, and the challenge just disappears. Hopu Games have made a phenomenal experience with Risk of Rain 2, and it's one that everyone should have in their Steam library. Alright, number 3 for me is Rogue Legacy 2. It's a game I bought when it was released in early access, and this game might be the best early access investment I've ever made. As soon as 1.0 released, I racked up over 60 hours on it in like a week, and while I haven't returned to it too much since, sitting at 64 hours now, this was the game that made me buy Dead Cells and Neon Abyss, two other 2D games. You see, before Rogue Legacy 2, I shied away from 2D games because I had the impression that they were either too hard on mouse and keyboard or just a worse experience on mouse and keyboard. Rogue Legacy 2 proved me wrong. This game feels amazing to play. To me, it perfects the mechanics it's trying to go for. Killing enemies and maneuvering around the game feels so smooth. Nothing in this game feels unfair either. Every time you die, it is 100% your fault. And the way the game teaches you what enemies do, what traps do, how to move around the rooms, it's all organic and understandable. And I think that's the biggest thing Rogue Legacy 2 has going for it. The fact that the complexity lies in the skill ceiling, but also how the game is easy to understand. Enough so that when you do die, you can move on going, okay, I know how to do that now, or I know how to beat him now. That doesn't mean the game isn't deep elsewhere, however, the castle skill tree is huge, there's multiple extra challenges to go through, and you can upgrade weapons and gear, as well as plenty of New Game Plus content to unlock and play around with as well. I love what Celador Games have done with Rogue Legacy 2, it's also well balanced and challenging. I can't speak highly enough about it, and I'm thankful that it introduced me to a style of games I would have previously shied away from. Number 2 is none other than Cyberpunk 2077. Coming in at 108 hours, the question everyone asks now is the game good now? My answer is yes. Get it on sale if you can, but it's a solid game now. I hadn't played it since 2020 when it was released, and then I decided to go for a 100% run after the 1.5 patch, and the 1.5 patch changed everything for me. The game is so polished now, mechanics are smoother, and it's awesome to be able to experience the phenomenal story without any game-breaking issues. If you could find anything to love about the version that we all played on launch, then you'll most likely enjoy the game much more now. To give it some praise, the open world is beautiful, characters and story are a big strong point, weapon variety and combat variety is solid, there's a lot of content to knock out, so many awesome side quests, and if you're a completionist like me, this is a game that isn't too hard to pull it off, and it is satisfying to do so. One thing I'll recommend you do is visit the r/fucktaa subreddit and find Cyberpunk in their list of games that forces anti-aliasing and turn that shit off. I don't know why games are forcing it nowadays, but a game as pretty as Cyberpunk doesn't deserve to be ruined by some shitty, blurry anti-aliasing. There isn't much else to say about Cyberpunk that people don't already know about the game, so I can only recommend you give it another chance, and of course, the DLC releases next year, so that's something else to be excited about. When it comes to honorable mentions, there are only two I want to elaborate on, and then there are a few that I'll just rattle off. The first game I want to give an honorable mention to is Grounded, a game that came out of early access this year, and while some people might look at the store page and see it as a game that's on the same tier as like Subnautica or The Forest, to me, it's on an entirely different tier above them. It's a game with a surprisingly long playtime, a lot of depth, and a concept that Obsidian nailed. And the next honorable mention is It Takes Two. I don't have any footage of this game either, but I think that's a good thing because I don't want to spoil it. It was like being transported to a world where developers gave a fuck about how fun a game is and just like cared about giving the most enjoyable experience you could possibly deliver. So I won't spoil anything about it, but grab a friend, run through it with a friend, a seriously 10 out of 10 game. And the other honorable mentions I'll run through are Dying Light 2, Raft, For the King, Vampire Survivors, Dead Cells, Monster Train, Civ 6, Escape Simulator, Heroes of Hammerwatch, Cult of the Lamb, and many more. But those are just a few that I thought I should mention. For me, the most enjoyable game I played in 2022 was Deep Rock Galactic. Released in 2020, this year was the first time playing it, and I racked up 101 hours. The first thing I'll say about this game is that the developers, Ghost Ship Games, give a fuck about the game, and in 2022, that's already a good sign. The concept is simple. Go into a cave system with an objective to complete, kill some bugs while completing the objective, and get out before you get overrun. A simple concept, but the more you play, the more you'll realize the complexity of not only the strategies that are needed to be successful, but the depth of progression as well. DRG's mechanics feel awesome, moving around the caves feels great, and shooting bugs has never felt more satisfying. I've noticed so many little details within the mechanics that make the experience smoother that I'm so appreciative of, and that attention to detail stretches further out into the rest of the game as well. This game is very polished and runs very well. Whether you're solo or playing with friends, I can't praise the core gameplay loop enough. Ghost Ship Games have done everything in their power to make the core gameplay experience fun and enjoyable while also making it incredibly replayable. The varieties in cave systems, missions, mission modifiers, weapons, and perks will keep you coming back and will keep you making builds to further optimize so you can take on the harder challenges. There are hundreds of hours of gameplay within DRG, all better experienced with friends, but of course the solo experience is incredible as well. With constant support from the devs and incredibly active community, DRG isn't going anywhere and only gets better and better with each season. So those are the games I enjoyed the most this year. 4 out of 5 of them were roguelikes, which just reinforces how strong that genre is to me. But yeah, more videos to come. Thanks for watching this one, and see you next time.